All right, Coach, off to a great start, but Utah ended up coming back for the reverse sweep. What do you tell your players after a match like that?
Well, we have to focus on what we did well, to continue to build, and that's what we did coming off of the BYU match. Was not about the end result, but what we did that put us in contention to win a set, and be competitive. And so that's what we built on, is we have to focus forward. We can't look back, just learn from what we did well and keep building on that.
Yeah, your team really came out swinging in the beginning in those first two sets. I saw Emily made her return. Of course, how much did bringing Emily back into the fold help you guys offensively?
Well, anytime a player comes back, there's, I think, a new energy, a new excitement. They're familiar with her. They've always loved her as a teammate, but, every player has some different strengths. And so her ability to hit a bunch of different shots and be lethal behind the service line, that was huge for us today.
What Utah ended up kind of bouncing back on the side out later on in the match, just what was the difference between the Utah you saw in the first two sets versus the Utah you saw the rest of the match?
Just higher air than they had been. Some of that was imposed by us, and we were playing very clean and we were getting kills, but they were also making errors and not helping themselves. So we knew that that was going to even out. They were going to lessen their errors and what they were giving to us, and then it's just a matter of learning how to finish.
When you see Utah, you mentioned had that evening out. How do you kind of keep your players in the game? Because there were some moments where where your team kept it close.
Yeah, well, when we've been on such a losing streak for so long, they're saying the right things, but learning how to win, knowing how to win is a skill. Just because you're saying the right things, there's still that internal dialogue that you're trying to quiet down, or those moments of doubt or insecurity, and those kind of crept in a little bit as much as they were then again asserting themselves. So for us, it was just learning really to settle and build, and I thought we did that in the fourth set. So even though we lost, again, we inched our way up. So we really started building some momentum at the end of the third set, even though there was a pretty big point spread early. We kind of built on that momentum, and then we were much more competitive in the fourth, and then tried to carry that over to the fifth, which again, I think we did. It was just not enough for a team. If you look at the fifth set, you'd be pretty proud of your team hitting 389 and sighting out at 64%. 64% is 2% above that axiom that we're trying to hit, and that puts you in contention to win. The downside is they were at 76% and hitting over 400. So just as much as you're excited about your team's performance, it does depend on what the other team is doing as well, and they were keeping it close to, if not a couple, percentage points above us.
Not only did you have Emily and Ava, you also had Alexia coming in, like about half of her attacks turning into kills. How big was her performance?
Yeah, I think much better. She had struggled a few matches to be terminal, and she had a really hot day today where they were falling, and she was really dynamic and going hard, and she's been putting in the work, and you see the results.
You also had 9 service aces, and to cancel out your 9 service errors with Ava and Alexia both getting some clutch aces right there. I mean, how do you compare the team that you saw back in Cincinnati when we were talking about the service errors there versus the team we're looking at right now that that actually got points on the serve ahead of Utah?
Well, I think in the past there was a lot more fear, a lot more insecurity, because I think we had talked about errors and we were trying to cut them down, but I think there was just so much emphasis on not making errors. And, when you focus on the negative side of things, you're not going to get the results that you want. And so we've been kind of shifting that mindset a little bit to being assertive and being able to be really accurate with what we're trying to get, whether or not it's an ace. We're not going for the ace per se as much as we know what happens and can predict what happens when they pass the ball, either perfect or imperfect, and then set up our defense. So it's allowed our defense to be that much more successful too, whether or not the aces were falling.
Well, at least it is an improvement though of Halloween.
Absolutely. I mean, subsequently the errors have been lessening, or we're right at that mark where at least we're either even or ahead on the ace side.
Chloe also ended up crossing the 1,500 dig mark tonight for her career, joining her teammate McKenna Melville, who of course you recruited. How proud are you of her to reach that mark?
Well, it's fantastic. Chloe has served in a couple different roles. She's been the bro for the last couple years. She was a DS before that. And sometimes when she was in the libero jersey, we shifted her middle back. And so very proud of her that she's embraced and accepted her role and found the ability to hit that benchmark.
How has your defense kind of settled in, since it looks like Cam Shelton has kind of inserted herself into the main rotation now?
Yeah, I think we have just focused on the whole system of defense, the block, the defense around it. Obviously, I think we've narrowed in a lot more on really the attackers' tendencies and put them in position to be that much more effective, whereas we were early on in the season, I guess really about 2/3 of the season, we were so neutral that we really weren't blocking and or digging anything, and we've been much more thoughtful the second half.
You talk about saying all of the right things, but winning, of course, being a skill. 11 matches. But what do you tell your team now? Because of course you have Kansas State coming up, your senior night game. Like what do you kind of tell them as the emotions of not just not winning for a while, but also the fact that they're having their last home match very soon?
Well, I think, trying to block out the outside noise. I was fortunate to be a part of a national championship team, and we didn't talk about winning other than the process the entire time. It wasn't about win this match. It was about win the warm-ups, win the handshake, win the national anthem, win the drill, okay, and practice every day. That's really the winning we talked about, not the end game. And I think while everybody's aware of where our record is, there's a reason we were in 5 sets today. There was a reason that we were in 4 sets the other day. It's because we've been focusing so much on the process, not about the end game. If we focus on the end game, it's a flop, okay? You look at the record and, it's a losing season, but we don't have the week that we did, especially under the challenges that we've been dealing with, without focusing narrowly and the journey and the process and getting more and more competitive within a set to even put ourselves in position to winning 1 or 2.
What does it mean to you to see Emily back to be able to play for senior night?
Oh, I think for any senior, you want to see them at least physically able to get onto that court, not just kind of walk onto the court and serve a ball. She's been busting her butt trying to put herself in that position. So very proud of the efforts of her as well as our sports medicine.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about this team over the course of this past month and a half?
Just how resilient they are. They're human and there's emotion and a lot involved in it, but I think how resilient they've been, and then recognizing how in control they are of those emotions and being able to really focus in on what they want for that day, what their goals are for that day, and to think narrowly. I think I'm really proud of them as young women to be able to do that.
Last question.
What's the biggest thing you want to see today carry over into that senior night match against Kansas to maybe halt the losing streak?
Yeah, I think it's just building on the momentum. It wasn't this match alone. It was, I think, both matches is seeing the putting some of that fearlessness or fear aside and going for it, and that no opponent's going to give it to you. So I think they have the ability to really give themselves credit for what they did in that match, not as much to slow down their opponent as much as to score on them.
All right, awesome. Well, best of luck, Coach.